pressing story. I've made and used my own flower presses because I've had specific needs I discovered over time during my practice that I wanted to meet. Initially, I started my flower and leaf pressing practice using a large-faced university scrapbook. Then I graduated to a handmade press. I drilled and installed myself. I wanted a single press, but I ended up with 12 feet lengths of wood, and as a result, ended up with 6 beautiful flower presses, wooden flower presses that I still use today. So, in lieu of Amazon, online shopping, and importing, and the dreaded wait, I chose to reduce my delayed gratification and I ventured to the local hardware. I shopped around and I sought assistance there to have the lumber cut as expertly as possible on the spot. So, the edges of my initial flower presses are jagged. The boards are not uniform dimensions, but the function was and still is superb. So I returned home, set up my work table, drilled the holes, installed the bolts, the washers and nuts I sourced from another local hardware, and I completed my first set of flower presses. Since then, I've commissioned a large face flower press. It was a gift to myself that I had made after seeking the expertise of a woodworking hobbyist. And then I commissioned him to make an additional set for the online shop that I create. I commissioned him to make precise presses based on my experiences and trials with him, incorporating his knowledge of wood and woodwork. So together we bring these wooden flower presses to the world. Each press is named Story N, and I can't wait to share about each one with you. So if you notice, I created a little sketch that I've used to guide the commissioning of the flower presses that I had done, showing the dimensions, the size of the bolts and nuts, and the sizes I preferred for the shop. I thought it was, based on my experience, really interesting to have large and small presses for use together, mainly because of the different types of specimens available. Some plants, they have large face flowers and the stems and the leaves, so to kind of play with form and size, I commissioned 2 different sets of presses based on dimensions. So once I've gotten to the point where the boards were commissioned, I did what you call a QA/QC type check and documented the aspects that I was happy with and those I would have needed changed and rectified, and in what way. So aspects of the feel and look of the board, the type of wood used, the size, which is very critical, the bolts, and the general, aesthetic, and obviously the function. So what you're looking at here is the first completed board. There are no jagged edges. He introduced me to live edges. He introduced me to beautiful hardwoods, a variety of them. The bolts are a lot chunkier, which gives you this sturdy feel to the boards. And if you look here, you would see each press comes with 2 boards, an upper and a lower board, a bolt and nut hardware. Each press is able to press roughly 10 layers of flowers, petals, and leaves, and is built with alternating layers of separator, filler, and flower layer sheets. We'll get to the specifics soon. So if you notice here, you would see we have a separator layer sheets, filler layer sheets, flower layer sheets, and then this is where we actually house any flowers, petals, or leaves, and then we repeat. We have a flower layer sheet to cover that, filler layer sheets on top of the flower layer sheets, and then your separator layer sheets. It's not complicated as it possibly looks here. So what you find here, I'm going to demonstrate how I layer the press and the different layers with a brief explanation. So you have first your separator layer sheet, which is a layer of cardboard, my filler layer sheet, which I'm experimenting using old phone book paper, and the flower layer sheet. I'll get into that detail a little later. On the flower layer sheets, we layer the flowers, any leaf specimens, any stems, anything you like, leaves. And this dance is repeated until the press is completely full. So again, I'll repeat it. You have your separator layer sheet, which is a cardboard. I laid a couple filler sheets, which is your filler layer, and on top of the filler layer you have the flower layer. This layer is what interacts with the flowers, leaves, and petals directly and serves a really important function. Onto the flower layer sheets, here I am laying the flowers. I'm using Cosmos in this demonstration. So once I'm finished with the flowers, laying my flowers, leaves, and stems, and I'm happy with my design, I complete that particular layer by laying another flower layer sheet over my flowers, some filler layer sheets over that, and then another separator layer sheet, which is basically cardboard. And then we continue this. I'm laying some more filler layer sheets. I'm going to lay a flower layer sheet and then my flowers. Take a look at how this is done until the press is completely loaded. The separator layers of my press and what I use. Think of the press as not only a single sandwich, but multiple sandwiches stacked on each other. The sandwiches are filled with flowers, petals, and leaves. The bread is layers of paper, filler paper, and blotting paper, with a crust of cardboard, and the cardboard really separates each sandwich. Take a look here. I've identified the cardboard separator layers. So I use cardboard as my separator layers. So I use cardboard as my separator layers. I use saved cardboard from boxes that I would have had saved from items purchased. Sometimes my friends would have come and drop off carloads of cardboard. Particular best friend is really good with this. I got a huge stock from her, still using them, and that's basically what I use for my separator layer sheets. You can purchase cardboard, however I find it very economically feasible to reuse cardboard, and it's a feel-good feeling to reuse, recycle in such a way. So that's what I use for my separator layer sheets. So that's it. Hand-cut cardboard from saved boxes and things. A separator layer is essential, not only for providing a sturdy layer between your pressed flowers, a way to organize your pressing, but also critical in the outcome, the texture and surface of each of your pressed flowers, petals, and leaves. It's a really important layer. Here's a look at the separator layer sheets in my shop. These are not reused or recycled sheets. While these are not reused or recycled sheets, they serve the exact purpose and offer options for those who prefer this clean, pristine, label-free pieces of cardboard. These are the reusable sheets I would use. If you notice, the labels are still on them. They're not all uniform, and they have different sizes because I actually press using wooden flower presses of different sizes, and I've neatly stacked them here just to capture them, to show them to you that they are the ones that I would have cut from boxes, saved from packages, and stuff like that. So we're getting into the filler layers in a flower press and what I use. I'll typically use sheets of paper from old engineering training manuals, telephone books, and at times newspaper. See, this layer is very critical. Pressing flowers deals with extracting the moisture from the flower, the leaf, the plant part. And the better that's done, the better result you will have. It took me a really long time of trial and error to find this perfect match for filler layers and of my filler layer sheets. The truth is, every flower presses perfectly in its own time and under various conditions. And this is something you'll most likely learn once you get started and develop relationships with each and your pressing practice. So the filler layers of my press and what I use. I'd have previously mentioned and asked you to think of the press as not only a single sandwich but multiple sandwiches stacked on each other. And the sandwiches are filled with flowers, petals, and leaves. And the bread is the layers of paper, right? So I want you to think of the filler layer as the bulk of the bread. It is here that most of the moisture is absorbed and transferred to the flowers, petals, and leaves, and out of it while it dries, and it needs somewhere to reside. As it leaves the flowers, it needs somewhere to reside, fully, not partially, not temporarily, but fully. I've found the better the quality of your filler layer sheets, the better the result of your pressed flower. Not only color retention, texture, but actually the life of your pressed flower is solely dependent on how well you extract the moisture from the flower, the leaf, or the plant part. So this is an important layer. Here I demonstrate using arrows my filler layer sheets. In this image I would have used new printer paper just to probably capture the layers. So this is my filler layer. It's the moisture absorbing layers of my press. I would have experimented with using telephone book paper. I think it is one of the best papers you can use for pressing flowers in our climate. So if you notice, again, I would have labeled the layers with these arrows, filler layers, the moisture absorbing layers of my press. One of the things I've found a lot of when I started my pressing journey, a lot of the information I came across and digested was based on artists or DIY enthusiasts pressing flowers in different climates, different locations, different regions. And in following their advice, you learn quickly that, oh wow, I'm in a tropical climate. We have a wet season, dry season, and funnily enough, the change of seasons affects your pressing practice and your pressing ritual, and you're gonna have to pull and draw from different, strengths and release certain weaknesses as you navigate the seasons in your region and with your climate. Next, we move into the flower layer and what I use. I use grease-proof paper. If you ever had doubles, you'll know exactly what I mean. It's the paper in which they wrap our doubles in. For those outside of Trinidad and Tobago who may not be aware of what doubles is, the grease-proof paper is paper that wraps one of our street food, very popular street foods. So I've also used, in no particular special paper, I've tried parchment paper and I've also tried wax paper. The grease-proof paper is perfect every time. The wrong material damages the surface of the petals, flowers, leaves, plant material, and or sticks to the petals, making unblemished removal quite impossible. The perfect flower layer for me is one where I can not only see the beauty of each specimen, but also maintain and preserve it in the most efficient way. My favorite flower layer sheets are white and the clear ones that allow me to press each layer in the press, arranging the flowers, leaves, and petals as artwork in their own right, even while pressing. So I demonstrate now the flower layers of my press. I've found grease-proof paper in white and a slight gray color. I've also tried parchment paper, not wax paper, but parchment paper, and that also works very well. So I wanted to put that out there. It has a similar finish to the results that I would have gotten using grease-proof paper. So think of the flower layer as a protective layer for the surface of each flower, petal, leaf, or plant part being pressed. The flower layer of my press is the most important layer to me from an aesthetically pleasing point of view also. It's where I get to design each layer of my press, where I lay all the flowers, and I take this part very seriously. these are the flower layer sheets I have in the shop. They are about 20 to 30 sheets that are suitable for an entire press of 10 layers with a little extra. And you're free to shop these if you wish. I also have put together kits where there's not only the press, we have put together the separator layer sheets, a couple filler layer sheets, and the parchment and the grease-proof paper for you to easily grab and use quickly and get started without the fuss. And that's it for the section on my flower press and what I use for each layer. And feel free to go back and repeat the information held here. Next, we are going to step into storing your pressed creations.